Oppression is unjustly using power against a specific group. Since 1640, people living homeless or in poverty have been oppressed. According to NCBI, the homeless definition is, quote, an individual who lacks a fixed, regular, and adequate nighttime residence, end quote. This could also include people whose nighttime residence may include a publicly operated shelter, an institution providing temporary residence, or a public or private place not designed for regular sleeping accommodations. The University of Washington says that, quote, to be poor means to lack basic necessities, and poverty is considered the main and largest contribution of the homeless, end quote. According to the students at the University of Washington, it is believed that during colonial America, homelessness began with people who did not have a home and wandered place to place looking for work. This only increased during the American Revolution, when many individuals were forced onto the streets. Many people remained homeless, especially in growing cities, because the government did nothing to help. In 1932, the homeless population grew because of the Great Depression. Since then, natural disasters, lack of basic necessities, and changes in the economy have forced more and more people to poverty and the streets. According to the students of the University of Washington, in 2004 it was estimated that 12.7% of the U.S. population lived in poverty. According to NCBI, there have always been homeless population in the United States, but in the past decade, this issue has been capturing the public's attention. Middle-aged men make up a shrinking fraction of the homeless, while families with young children are increasing in the homeless population. Homeless are also becoming more visible in neighborhoods and communities, which is making the public become more aware of them. Being homeless or living in poverty also brings health issues, personal issues, feelings of isolation, increased drug and alcohol problems, negative effects on the community, domestic violence, lack of medical care, developmental problems in children, mental health issues such as depression and PTSD, more likely attempts to suicide, and many other negative consequences. Just as with every oppressed group, people have created stereotypes about poor and homeless people. Some of these stereotypes include that people living in poverty are lazy, irresponsible, don't care about their health or education, are dishonest, and criminal. People assume that the homeless spend all of their money on drugs or alcohol, and they all live in cardboard boxes on the street. Because of these stereotypes, people living in poverty face negative treatment every day. This includes poor health care, limited access to education, issues with the law and law enforcement, fines, loss of child custody, difficulty finding employment, and loss of social benefits. Poor people are being denied life-saving services and educational opportunities because of who they are and where they live. Those living in poverty are targeted by law enforcement officials as criminals more than others. Because they are more likely to be incarcerated, finding a job is more difficult in the future. We see similar patterns in schools. Brookings Institution says poor students are about 1.7 times as likely as non-low-income students to be suspended. They also tend to receive longer suspensions than their peers for similar infractions. Academic achievement is more difficult for students because of a lacking of school supplies, nutrition, and places to do homework. They are also more likely to transfer schools, making it difficult to stabilize their needs and make connections. These issues in earlier school years cause struggles in receiving high school diplomas and resulting in a lower chance of college acceptance. Over the years, there have been attempts to improve the conditions of people living homeless or in poverty in schools. Title I of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965 funded school districts with a high percentage of low-income families, providing schools opportunities to close the skill gaps in academics between children from low-income households and students from middle-income households. In 2002, the McKinney-Vento Education for the Homeless Children Act was renewed. This meant that in the selected school districts, schools were allowed to enroll in schools without paperwork providing their residency. The school districts are also required to provide transportation to students to allow students to stay in the same school, even when they're moving around. Unfortunately, this act was underfunded, and they could only serve 9% of the school districts. Despite these two acts, children still face oppression in the classroom. Some frustrations might include being ashamed of where they live, teased from other students, problems with parents, difficulty adjusting, lack of support from home, developmental delays, and other issues. A lot of these issues can be addressed in the classroom, as the teachers and peers create a culture where each child feels valued and respected. Teachers have the responsibility to recognize that all students come into the classroom with their own cultural capital and primary discourse. If teachers are aware of this, They can use that foundation as a springboard to enhance learning and create a safe classroom community. This would require teachers to look outside what is normal and comfortable for them and consider what is best for their students. Oppression against specific groups, including people who are homeless and living in poverty, seems to be a never-ending problem in our society. In order to make a difference, we need to start by recognizing our own biases and by changing ourselves.